The safest AI company in the world just had its AI used in a military raid that killed 83 people, and then the same week they quietly dismantled the safety promise that made them famous. Their head of AI safety resigned and said the world is in peril. The President of the United States banned them from the entire federal government. $380 billion valuation, $14 billion in revenue, the hottest AI company on earth, being punished for caring how its product was used. Here's the question I kept coming back to while I was reporting this story. How does the company that was founded specifically to prevent AI from being misused end up here? We're going to answer that. But hold on to something else, because there's a second question buried inside this story that's actually more dangerous than the first one. And I'm going to plan it right now so you don't forget it. Did Anthropic abandon its safety promise the same week all of this exploded? We'll come back to that. Keep it in mind. To understand what's happening to Anthropic, you have to understand what it was supposed to be. 7 researchers walk out of OpenAI, not because the company is failing, but because they think it's moving too fast towards something they can't control. Dario Amodei leads the exit. They raised $124 million on a single pitch, responsible AI development for humanity's long-term benefit. Everything about this company was a deliberate contrast to OpenAI. Where OpenAI moved fast, Anthropic moved carefully. Where OpenAI chased virality, Anthropic built for enterprise trust. And they published a binding commitment called the Responsible Scaling Policy. Anthropic would never train a more powerful AI model unless it could guarantee in advance that its safety measures were adequate. The company literally described itself as having a soul. Fast forward to February 2026. Anthropic closes a $30 billion funding round at a $380 billion valuation. Revenue, $14 billion annually, growing 10 times every year for 3 consecutive years. 8 of the 10 largest Fortune 10 companies are Claude customers. They just ran Super Bowl ads mocking OpenAI. This company is winning convincingly. So why is everything suddenly unraveling? Keep that question. The answer isn't what you think. Before we get into the collapse, you need to understand one deal. In late 2024, Anthropic partnered with Palantir to bring Claude into US government systems, classified ones. Claude became the first AI model ever deployed on the Pentagon's most sensitive classification tier, embedded into command and control architecture. And here's what Anthropic believed. The guardrails would travel with the model. The Pentagon could use Claude for intelligence analysis and data processing, but the hard limits would hold. No autonomous weapons, no domestic surveillance. They thought they could be inside the machine and still control how it ran. They were wrong. Anthropic's entire identity depended on one premise: that you could build powerful AI and hold an ethical line. Safety and capability weren't in conflict, they were complementary. What happens when the government, the market, and your competitors all conspire to make that premise impossible to hold? Remember that question. We're going to need it. Let me walk you through exactly how this fell apart. Scene by scene, January 3rd, 2026. The United States launches a massive military raid on Caracas. Over 200 special operations forces, 150 aircraft. The stated objective, capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. They succeed. 83 people are killed, according to Venezuela's defense ministry. And somewhere inside this operation, running through Palantir's platform on classified networks, is Claude. Anthropic's terms of use explicitly prohibit using Claude for violent ends, for weapons development, for operations that cause harm. Someone at Anthropic apparently heard about Venezuela, and they asked Palantir, was our AI used in the raid? According to a senior Pentagon official, the question was raised in a way that implied Anthropic might disapprove of what their software was used for. Palantir's leadership was alarmed. They went to the Pentagon, and suddenly a routine business relationship became a national security confrontation. Anthropic denied the whole thing. The Pentagon stood by their account. But here's the thing. It almost doesn't matter which version is true, because the fact that Anthropic was even in a position where this question could be asked, that was the problem. The guardrails didn't travel with the model. The model had traveled into territory the guardrails weren't built for. Mid-February 2026, the Wall Street Journal reports Claude was used in Venezuela. Then Axios confirms it. The story goes global. The Pentagon releases a statement. In his words, "Our nation requires that our partners be willing to help our warfighters win in any fight." That's not a statement. That's a message. Drop the guardrails or get out. A senior defense official describes the coming meeting with Dario Amodei as a shit or get off the pot meeting. And then February 24th, something nobody expected. The same day, Hegseth gives Amodei a formal deadline. Anthropic publishes a blog post overhauling the responsible scaling policy, the core pledge, the binding commitment, the thing that made them Anthropic, gone. Replaced with flexible goals described as non-binding. Jared Kaplan, Anthropic's chief science officer, explains it in an interview with Time. In his words, "We felt that it wouldn't actually help anyone for us to stop training AI models. We didn't feel it made sense to make unilateral commitments if competitors are blazing ahead." 2 days later, Anthropic's head of AI safeguards research posts his resignation letter publicly. He writes that the world is in peril. Ask yourself this: if the head of safety at the safest AI company resigns and says the world is in peril, while his company is simultaneously fighting the government over AI weapons and dropping its core safety pledge, what is actually happening here? Now you have your answer to the second question. Yes, they did quietly abandon the safety promise the exact same week they were publicly holding the line with the Pentagon. Anthropic says the two events are unrelated. That may be true, but when a company built on a promise quietly changes that promise, in the same week it's fighting a public battle over that promise, the optics don't care about your internal timeline. Friday, February 27th, 5:01 p.m., that was the deadline. Hegseth had given Amodei a binary choice: allow Claude to be used for all legal purposes, including autonomous weapons targeting, including domestic surveillance, or lose the contract and the label that goes with it. Amodei drew two lines and refused to move them: no autonomous weapons, no mass surveillance of American citizens. 5:01 p.m. came and went, then the dominoes fell. President Trump directed all federal agencies to stop using Anthropic's products. Hegseth designated Anthropic a supply chain risk to national security. That label isn't procedural. It's a weapon. It means the Pentagon would not do business with any firm that uses Anthropic's AI in their defense work. Not just Anthropic directly. Every contractor, every startup in the defense tech ecosystem that had built anything on Claude. Within days, a single venture fund reported 10 of its portfolio companies told employees to stop using Claude immediately. Anthropic gets 80% of its revenue from enterprise customers. Enterprise customers don't stay when a government blacklist is involved, not because they want to leave, because their legal teams won't let them stay. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, the company Anthropic's founders left, publicly backed Amodei. Said he trusted Anthropic. Said OpenAI has the exact same red lines. If the Pentagon fired Anthropic and tried to replace them with OpenAI, they'd hit the same wall. The Pentagon had picked a fight with the entire frontier AI industry. So there it is. How did the company founded to prevent AI misuse end up in a war with the US government? Because it actually tried. Here's what the crisis revealed. Anthropic's safety positioning was never just ethics, it was a business model. The safety brand was the competitive moat. It's why enterprises trusted them with sensitive data. It's why they were chosen for classified networks. It's why they got a $200 million Pentagon contract while OpenAI was still trying to get clearances. The thing that made them safe to trust was the same thing that made them commercially dominant. And the moment they were trusted enough to go inside the classified infrastructure, the military's logic took over, not because anyone was evil, because that's how power works. You earn your way in by being different, and once you're in, you're expected to be the same. Senator Ron Wyden reframed this entire story. He pointed out what the Pentagon actually wanted Claude for: not battlefield analysis, not logistics. The DoD has been purchasing data from commercial data brokers: location data, browsing records, mental health information, political affiliations, religious activity, pennies per record on the open market. And they wanted Claude to combine it all, to build profiles of Americans. Anthropic's red line wasn't just about drones, it was about whether an AI company could stop its model from being used to surveil its own citizens. The government's position was, that's not your call to make. Let me close the loops. The success and the trouble are the same thing. Anthropic got so good, so fast, so deeply embedded in classified infrastructure that the government couldn't function without them. And that's exactly when they demanded total control. You don't threaten to blacklist a company you don't need. Anthropic earned their way into a position where the government couldn't let them leave and couldn't let them have principles. And the deeper question, the one I told you to hold at the beginning, was whether safety was ever really more than a brand. Here's my honest answer. I think Anthropic believed it. The decision to drop the RSP wasn't cynical. It was the company confronting the logical endpoint of their own founding paradox. They wrote it themselves in the new policy. If one AI developer paused development while others moved forward, the developers with the weakest protections would set the pace, and responsible developers would lose their ability to do safety research. Read that carefully. Anthropic is saying, we abandoned our safety promise in order to remain safe. We dropped the guardrail so we could stay in the race. That sentence should not make sense. The fact that it does, that's the story. The 6-month phase-out clock is ticking. Anthropic has said it will sue. The courts will decide whether Hegseth even had the authority to do what he did. But I want to leave you with something that happened the same day the ban came down. Claude went to #1 on the Apple App Store. While the federal government was banning it, the public flooded in. Not because of a product launch, not because of a Super Bowl ad, because Anthropic refused to comply. The brand survived the ban, at least so far. But the question I can't stop thinking about isn't really about Anthropic, it's bigger than that. If the most safety-conscious AI lab ever built, the one founded by researchers who left because they were scared of what was being built, cannot hold its own red lines when the government pushes hard enough. Like, what does that tell us about every AI company's safety promises? What does it tell us about ours?